This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And whenever I can talk music with somebody, my life just changes overnight. I have David Combs with him. And in fact, think I remember when I connected with David, he wondered why I wanted to talk to him. And the big reason is that I think music is what gets us through that maze of life every single day. We wake up in the morning, we really think we know what direction we're going in, and oftentimes we take many forks in the road. So, welcome, David. I'm so glad that you're here today. And I
Well,
see
thank you,
that
Karen. And
beautiful.
you can call me Dave.
All right, I'll call you
I know
Dave.
my given name is David, and
Okay.
my I knew I was always in trouble with when I would hear David. That was my mom calling. I had done something I wasn't supposed to do. So,
Well,
but
we all
you can call me
call you.
Dave.
All right. Um, But I started to say, I see your baby grand there. And then behind you, you have a poster and it says, touched by the music.
That's a picture of my book cover.
Ah, okay. So tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, I have been in the music all my life. I just turned 75 years old just recently. And so I've been in music though ever since I was born. My mom and dad were both musical, my grandparents, the whole family. So I've been around music all my life. And I wrote a song called Rachel's Song that we'll talk about a little bit in a few minutes when I was 33 years old. Of course, now that was a little while ago when that happened, about 41 or 2 years ago.
Right.
But in the meantime, that song has led to many other songs. I've written over 120 songs, and I've recorded over 170 songs on 14 albums of music. And all that music has gone out into the world over these years. It used to be in physical CDs and cassette tapes, but now it's in the digital world with downloads and streaming. But millions of people have heard my music around the world. And Rachel's Song in particular was what got it all started for me. And I started getting years ago letters from people telling me how much my music had touched their lives and it had touched their hearts and souls. That's okay.
Yeah. I don't know why it comes in because everything is turned off. So we apologize for that.
That's quite all right. That's what we have editors for, right?
Right.
So anyway, so I started getting letters from people all over the world about how my music touched their lives. And those letters accumulated to over 50,000 of them. Now, I know, Karen, that's a lot of letters. If I could show you the boxes, they would be, stacked up 5 feet high, a row of them.
Right.
Full of letters and notes. And they're all very, very touching. And they pour their heart and soul out to how much my music has touched them, and like in the name of your podcast, it has helped them go through the maze of their life,
right?
And all the difficulties that a lot of people have. I'm very fortunate. I feel real blessed that I don't have some of those things that have happened to me, but other people have,
right?
And my music apparently really helped them through those times and troubles and whatever it was they were going through. And so that's what really led me to write my book, was all these thousands of notes that I just had to tell somebody else about them.
Well, and I really appreciate when people let somebody like yourself know how important a song, a lyric, a melody means to them. Because oftentimes, and I know growing up in the 50s and 60s, we listened to music and we got all excited about it. We told our friends about it, and some of us ran up to the record store and bought a 45. And people are listening going, what the heck is a 45? Go Google it. But typically, we didn't contact the artist and say, oh, your music is touching me. But I think it's really important, because how else are you going to know how, what we like, what we don't like, how it's affected us? Because I'm sure that can lead to the next creation that you make as well.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Was when I had only that one song that I'd written, and that, by the way, Rachel's song was the very first song I ever wrote in my life, and I was 33 years old. And the feedback from that one song was the seed of the motivation for me to write more music. I saw firsthand and heard firsthand what the music, how it touched people. I could sit down at the piano and play Rachel's song, and the person sitting there would just be tears streaming down their cheeks from being emotionally moved by the music. And then these letters did the same thing and told me of the same kind of effects. And so for me, that was a confirmation that writing and producing music was what God put me on this planet to do, among other things, but primarily that. And so it was very confirming that I was doing the right thing and that I needed to do some more of it. It wasn't something that I needed to just be, okay, I've written my great song now, I'll just sit back and watch what happens. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to keep going, you keep creating, you keep moving forward, and things happen. So as somebody I heard on the radio or the TV yesterday, somebody said something I thought was profound, was that you cannot turn left or right if you're not moving. And you stop and think about that. Even driving your car, you can sit in the car and turn your steering wheel all you want to, but if you're not moving, you're not going anywhere.
Absolutely.
And so that's a great analogy or metaphor for life. You know, you can't make the right turns in your life if you're not moving forward.
And, you know, on an earlier podcast that we recorded today, we talked about the fact that so many of us, even from a very young age, we dream of something we want to do. And we keep telling ourselves, you know, tomorrow, next week, next year. And the reality of it is we get stuck. And unless you do exactly like you said, move, take a step, pick up a pen and paper, sit down at your computer, or share that with somebody to make it a real commitment. And we're the only ones who can truly judge our success. Even all those letters you got, if you had expected that you were going to get 10 times the amount of those letters, you could have been disappointed. But the expectation was, hey, I know I like this. I'm going to put it out there for the world and we'll see what happens. And if it had been one person or thousands, you know, it confirms to you that, hey, this has meaning. So before you sat down and wrote that song, where did you see yourself going? Because you said that's really what influenced you for music. So what did you think of before that?
Well, I have a separate corporate career that was ahead of that.
Okay.
When I went to school, I was great in all through elementary school, high school. I was great in mathematics and science. I love science. So when I went to college, I went to East Tennessee State University and got my degree in mathematics.
Okay.
I minored in physics, and I worked in the computer center for 4 years, learning how to program a computer. Now, I graduated in '69, and if you look up what computers looked like in 1969, they're going to be the size of that piano behind me here.
Yep.
They were huge. Didn't have much memory either. The computer at the university only had 30K of memory.
Oh, wow.
K, not meg, 30K. So anyway, so that was my career, was in technology and computer science and computer programming and software, and I got a job, my first and only corporate job with Western Electric, which was a subsidiary of AT&T. That was the manufacturing arm of the Bell system. And I was a computer programmer, technology expert. And I was talking with somebody else today about this, that it's kind of funny, not funny, it's ironic that my career was in all that technology and my specialty was in manufacturing and logistics and inventory control and all of those systems that run a factory.
Right.
And one of the places that I was having to work as a consultant to an internal consultant in the company was Nashville, Tennessee. Now, isn't it ironic that of all the places I could have been working, I have to work in Nashville, Tennessee, which is, guess what?
How wonderful.
Music City,
Yes,
USA, right?
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that was a connection that I think was probably done by somebody besides higher up than me, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so I was there in Nashville, and that's what led me to get a recording made of the song that I had written 6 years earlier. And so that recording then launched the music part of my business throughout the world, because then you could play it on the radio. It got played
Right.
on every easy listening station in the United States, all 400 of them at the time. People started writing to me. Like you said, they went to the trouble of tracking me down, getting my address, and writing me a letter about the music they heard on the radio.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so then I got, they wanted a copy of it. And you said a 45 a while ago. The first thing I did with my Rachel song, that's the only song I had, was one song.
Okay.
I got a 45 record made of Rachel's song, so that I could at least have a physical product to sell to somebody or to give to a radio station to play. So I think I have a couple of them left, but they're the 45 with the big hole in
Right.
the middle,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
So that was my first recording of Rachel's song that was a physical product.
How
But
interesting. And,
but
for people who are listening, and especially if they're in their 20s or maybe even younger, a lot of this that they're hearing going, wait a second, that makes no sense. Why was it on something physical? Why couldn't I just go download it? Because you did talk computers, but I remember those computers because my mother went back to work, I think when I was like 14, so that was, no, probably 1960, when I was 10.
mhm.
And she trained to be a key punch operator. And
Yes.
she would come home and tell us about this big machine she sat at every single day. Yeah.
And the
Um,
80 column cards go through there, and so you type in the programs, right, or the data right on those physical
exactly.
cards.
Yep. And then when I married my current husband, um, he had taken key punch operating in high school. And he doesn't throw anything away. So we had cartons of key punch cards.
Yeah.
And I said, what's on these? He said, I don't remember anymore, but programs. I said, well, I can't put it into my computer right now, so I don't care. Let's get rid of them. But industry has changed. And the reason I'm bringing this up is today, a lot of people think they've got artistic talent. And
Mm-hmm.
so they'll open up their computer, they will put a whole orchestra behind them, and then they'll perform on YouTube. And some of them are absolutely wonderful, but there are so many others that can really hurt my ears, at least. But I think that's giving us an opportunity, though, of testing the waters.
Sure. That creativity now, if I had had what's in my laptop today, I have more capability in my laptop than was in the entire city of Nashville, Tennessee
Yeah.
back in 1986. It's amazing. So you can create and you can do a high quality job. And if you are a talented, gifted person with those God-given gifts of being able to sing, perform, play, whatever, you can create some magnificent material on your laptop or your own home studio and get it out to the world on YouTube or all the platforms very, very easily.
Right.
But that also means, like you said, there are probably 10 times of that you probably just want to push the mute button real fast because it's going to hurt your ears. But anyway, at least they're trying. At least they're doing something.
And exactly, I remember the first time I started looking on YouTube and I was finding individuals who I didn't think were talented. Let's just leave it at that. And I kept saying to my husband, why would somebody want to do this? He said, why not? He said, number one, you just may not like it. He said, but there could be 10 other people out there, 1,000 other people who do like it. And I thought about it and I said, you're absolutely right. Because there once was a time, if somebody was said, do you like country western music? I would have said, absolutely not. I've changed my mind. I like so many different genres now because I listen to them differently. I
Hmm.
don't
Hmm.
say, hey, I don't understand the words. Okay, but do I like the melody? Or I like the words, maybe I don't like the melody. But
Hmm.
it's at getting introduced to new things all the time.
Hmm.
So introduce us to Rachel's song. What is it about Rachel's song that just, changed your life?
Well, I love to tell this story because it really changed my life for sure. I sat down at my piano one evening after work, which is the way I like to relax. If when I was working for the corporation, I'd have a stressful day. I'd come home and I'd just sit down at the piano and I'd play something, and that always seemed to just make the rest of the troubles of the world go away because I could either play sheet music of my favorite songs or turn on the radio and try to play along with whatever's playing, or just sit and mess around on the piano.
Sure.
And this particular evening, I sat down at my piano and I played this song. Now, it wasn't a song that I had music for, I had ever heard before, and I really didn't even think about it as playing a song. I just played it. And it was, best way I know to describe it, had to be an inspiration because I have no other explanation for it. It was the song never changed. I played the melody of the verse part of it, and then I played the chorus part of it, played it again. It never changed. And I loved it. It sounded great on the piano. It was in the key of C, easy to play, very simple melody. And so I didn't think much about it. My wife comes home from work a couple of days later and she says, Dave, I've got this song stuck in my mind all day long and I can't get it out. And I've been humming it. And what is the name of it? And she hummed a little bit of it. And I said, oh, it doesn't have a name. And she says, what? Exactly. Exactly. And so I said, well, it's just something I made up. And so she got all excited and said, well, have you written it down? And I said, no, I've got it up here. It's not going in. I won't forget it, I promise. She said, no, something might happen to you. And if it did, that song would be gone and I would never remember it like it's supposed to be remembered. I want you to write it down. I said, okay, yes, ma'am, I will. So I wrote it down on a piece of paper with the melody and the chords, just a simple record of it.
Sure.
Put it in my piano bench. We tried to come up with a pretty name for it, and nothing we ever came up with seemed to fit the song. We were just not good at naming this song. Well, roll the calendar forward about 2 years, and some friends of ours had a little baby girl whose name was Rachel, and they asked me and Linda to be her godparents. So, okay. So we're sitting in the church at little Rachel's christening service. And I'm at the front of the church on the platform is this baby grand piano, looked very much like the piano right behind me.
Sure.
And I'm listening to all the wonderful words that the minister is saying about little Rachel and her future life and all that kind of thing. And it's sweet service. And at the end of the formal service, I punched Linda and I said, hey, what if I played that tune that I've been playing now? Seems like it's a great opportunity to put it to good use here. And she said, okay. So I went up to the family and the minister and asked them if it would be okay if I played this little song. Oh, sure. So everybody sat back down and I go over to the piano and I sit down and I play this song. And I get most of the way through it. And I hear in the audience, I hear clearing their throat, sniffles here and there. And I noticed that I was having a few little teardrops coming down my cheeks. Because if you've ever been in a little christening service for a sweet little girl, you know how touching it is anyway.
Right.
Now you layer on top of that a song that is real, that tugs at your heartstrings, that it's just going to be over the top emotional. And when I finished playing the song, I looked up over in little Rachel in the arms of her mother, and I said, from now on, this song will be called Rachel's Song in her honor.
Oh.
And Karen, that's how it got its name. So with that beginning, it just had to go somewhere, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't disappoint any little girl,
No,
even though
no.
she was an infant at the time.
So roll the calendar forward another 3 years. I'm doing all this traveling with AT&T, and then it was Western Electric. It didn't become AT&T until 1984, but well, I guess it had become AT&T by this was 1986.
Okay.
So I was working with AT&T, and one of the places I was having to work during the week, the whole week long, was in Nashville, Tennessee. And Linda says, well, Nashville's got tons of musicians and studios. Why don't you go and get a demo recording made of Rachel's song while you're there? That's a great idea. So one evening after work, I'll go driving downtown Nashville looking for a studio. And if you've been to Nashville, you know you don't have much trouble finding a studio.
Right,
They're everywhere.
Exactly. Yep.
But I went to the part of town they call Music Square. And it's about a 2 or 3 square block area that's got the Country Music Hall of Fame and RCA studios and BMI and ASCAP headquarters and tons of stuff, everything musical.
Right.
And I go down this one little side street called Roy Acuff Place. And down at the end of the street is this big building that has a barn shaped to the roof of it. And out front on the street is a big water wheel. They have moved a big water wheel from a mill somewhere and placed it there on the corner. And the sign on the side of the building says, the Music Mill. I thought, okay, I think I'm at a good place. I pull in the parking lot, and sure enough, I look through the glass door, and there's a man sitting at a desk in the lobby. So I go over to the door and knock on it. He comes up, unlocks the door, and opens it, says, hello, I'm George Clinton. Can I help you? I said, I sure hope so, because I'm looking for a studio. Well, he says, well, come on in. And as I stepped into the lobby up here on the left, this is like a 2-story lobby, great big life-size picture of Glenn Campbell. And then here in front of me, a life-size picture of the whole group, Alabama.
Oh, wow.
And then here's the Forrester sisters, and then there's gold records and platinum records framed all around the walls. It just shouted at me like, man, this is a quality place. So George, I told George, I've never been in a studio in my life. He probably knew that from the first minute I opened my mouth, but he said, let me give you a tour. So he said, let's go into Studio A. There's nobody recording right now, which is very unusual, but it was 6 o'clock in the evening, and for some reason, nobody recorded that time. So we go into this Studio A room, and the room where all the musicians go, it's huge. You could put an orchestra in there, and probably had recorded orchestras. I don't know. It's a big room. And then he said, well, let's go over in the corner was this 9-foot concert grand piano as well, big, great piano. He said, let's go in the control room. Let me show you what goes on in there. So he opens this big, thick door. It's about 8 inches, 8 inches thick, soundproof door. And he opened it up and go in there. And first thing I see is this console. Looked like it was about 8 feet long. It had, I now know it probably had 32 tracks, which all these sliders and knobs and lights and everything to control all the channels and everything. And then around the wall were these tape recording machines. They literally used some physical tape back then and some digital recording as well. And then on the wall in front of where you're looking out through the glass window into the studio where the musicians are, these big monitor speakers where you could, obviously it would make a great reproduction of whatever you're recording. And I was just blown away. I said, George, how much does a place like this cost to rent? And he says, well, it's $125 an hour plus engineer. And remember, this is 1986.
Right.
In today's dollars, 125 is probably over $400 an hour. So in other words, bottom line, it was too expensive for my budget, certainly. Well, George, I'm sure he saw my disappointment in that number, and he says, well, don't worry, Dave. He said, the fellow who owns this studio owns a little tiny one across the street, and it's it's only $15 an hour plus engineer.
Okay.
Now I can do that. That works for me. So I said, all right, George, now all I need is a musician that can arrange and perform this little song I've written. And it's just a piano piece. It's all I need is a good piano player. And he thought for a second. He said, I know exactly who you need to call. He said, his name is Gary Prim. And he said, I've known Gary forever. We go to church together. He's a great fella. He's a wonderful musician. So let's go back to my desk and I'll get his phone number for you. Well, he wrote his number down on a piece of paper for me, and I thanked him, and I jumped in my rental car and hightailed it back to my hotel room. Because remember, this was 1986.
Right.
Cell phones had not been invented yet. The internet had not been invented yet. We had no email, all that stuff. So I had to go back to my hotel room and give Gary a call. I did, and got his answering machine. And 30 minutes later, phone rings. It's Gary Prim. He says, how can I help you? I said, well, George Clinton says that you're a great piano player and that you could do a demo recording for me. He said, I'd be happy to do that. I said, well, what do you need, Gary? And he says, all I need is a recording of you playing it so I kind of know what it sounds like. And I need a lead sheet. I said, okay, but what's a lead sheet? I did not know what a lead sheet was. I do now. But anyway, he said, oh, it's just the melody and the chords written down on a piece of paper. I said, oh, I've got that. I just didn't know to call it a lead sheet. So I thanked him, and he said, well, I'll get it arranged for him, and we can get it recorded in that little studio we were talking about. And so I went home, sent him that stuff, the lead sheet and the recording. And about 2 weeks later, on Friday, the 22nd of August, 1986, at 6 p.m., I met Gary Prim in this tiny little studio across the street from the music mill. And he comes walking into the studio with carrying his synthesizer. He brought his own little synthesizer with him. It's a Yamaha DX7. I have one just like it. I'm looking at it right here. And it's a wonderful analog synthesizer. And he sets it down and goes over to this little baby grand piano that's in the studio. It's a little Yamaha baby grand piano that I learned later was the first Yamaha piano ever shipped to Nashville from Japan.
Wow.
So this piano had some history. I'd love to know who all had played it, but I can just picture, Elvis Presley sitting there playing, or all the Floyd Kramer, all the wonderful piano players probably played that little piano. But anyway, so Gary sits down at the piano and he starts warming up. I go into the control room with the engineer, and pretty soon Gary's ready to record. So we push the record button and we're rolling. So that Gary knows we're recording.
Right.
And so Gary starts playing the song. He gets pretty much into it and he stops. He said, let's do that over. Rewind it back and let's start over. I can do better than that. So he did. Let's record again, and he plays the whole song all the way through. I mean, perfect. Not one missed note anywhere.
Wow.
And I'm in the control room listening to this. Now, remember, I had never, ever heard my song played by anybody but me. So I had no idea what to expect from this professional musician arranging and playing my song. But I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It sounded as good as any thing I'd ever heard from Roger Williams or Henry Mancini or anybody, these professional musicians. It was great. But Gary says, I'm not done yet. So I said, really? He said, yeah, I want to add some electric piano to the middle part of the song. Ooh. So he said, I'm going to do what we call doubling. He's going to play on the keyboard, the electric piano sound, exactly the notes he played on the real piano. And back then it was all analog. We couldn't do it electronically. Today you could do that electronically. But then he had to literally physically play it. So we hooked up the synthesizer, 2 more tracks of recording with the electric piano sound. He's got the headset on where he can listen to himself on the original recording.
Right.
And he plays the electric piano. Nailed it. I mean, that you couldn't tell that it was not but one instrument, really. It was that close. And so he finished that, sounded great. He says, now I want to add some bottom and some top to it. He said, I'm going to put some low strings to give it a little bottom and some high strings to give it some top. And so 2 more tracks for the low strings, put the headset on, record the low strings, and then 2 more tracks with the high string sound. He play that and records that. And then in the middle of the song, he says, I want to add a little bit of a punch in the middle where I change keys. So he said, I want to put some horns in there. I said, okay. So he horn sound, 2 more tracks, and records that. Now, his arrangement of the song, and when you listen to it, now that I'm describing it to you,
Sure.
you'll know what I'm talking about. He gets through the verse and the chorus. First time is just solo piano for the first verse part of it. Then the electric piano kicks in, and then some strings kick in. And then after the second verse and chorus, he instantly transposes up a half a step from C to C sharp. I mean, there's no modulation or anything. It's just you're going in C, and the next thing you know, the next verse starts in C sharp. And it's a musical surprise, one of those delightful things that kind of just gets your attention,
Right.
and you go, and you kind of go, wow, that, you know, it just brings the energy level of the song up. So he does that and plays the last verse and chorus in C sharp. And it's just, I know my mouth was wide open in the studio. I just was blown away. So he comes back in, we rewind it and mixes it so we can listen to the whole thing mixed together. And he says, I like it. I said, I love it. It is fantastic. So he said, I'm done. I said, great. So I wrote him a check for the agreed upon amount, gave it to him, and he gets his synthesizer and heads out the door. And I did not know whether I'd ever see that young man again in my life or not. But it turns out I would. He and I went back to the studio for over 15 years and recorded over 170 songs together, over 120 of which I had written, the original songs written by me. And Gary and his family, he was a very young man. I was only 36 or so, and he was in his late 20s. And he was newly married, had a new little baby and little baby girl. And then Linda and I watched his whole family grow up. He had a son and a daughter eventually. And so Gary and Julie and their 2 kids are like family.
How wonderful.
It's just to go to Nashville every year for a whole week and record an album and spend the whole week with Gary in the studio. And I like, my wife and I have never been blessed to have any children of our own, but had we had children, I can imagine that the birth of a child would probably be very akin to the creative process that we witnessed in the studio.
Sure. Absolutely.
Because you go in with a piece of paper and you come out with a beautiful creation. Same thing. And
I loved hearing you tell this story because, as I mentioned earlier, my brother is, he started out as a sound engineer.
Mm-hmm.
He's now into producing. And my son, he doesn't play an instrument, but what he does is he comes up with the sounds in his head. And then he will tell my brother or another musician friend, I need piano here, and it's going to sound like this. And I need something else here, and it's going to sound like that. And I listen to him give those instructions, and I think to myself, what is it going to be? But he knows how to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets it all put together by wonderful musicians who will say, okay, let me try this. And they try it. And like you probably did, well, yeah, that's good. Maybe we can tweak it a little bit more. So I'm so amazed at people with musical talent, because a lot of us think that it's as simple as you sitting down at the piano. Now, Rachel's song obviously was sort of like that for you. But
started that way anyway, yeah.
But I'm sure not every piece that you've written, but they think, well, many of us think you either pick up a guitar, you sit at the piano, and you just create it with lyrics, and it's perfect, and then you go record it. And the reality of it is, most of those songs end up on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And you might pick them up 20 years later and say, hey, let me see what I can do with this. But the reality of it, so much goes into the creative process and the recording. And that's why when I hear people saying, oh, I can get that music for free. It's like, maybe you should think about paying for that music in
Yeah.
some way.
Yeah, you probably remember in the late 90s when Napster came along.
Yes, yes.
Big controversy over Napster was basically taking my music and everybody else's copyrighted music and giving it away for free,
Right.
basically stealing it and giving it away for free on the internet. Well, that was a terrible theft of intellectual property, and it really almost killed the music industry.
Absolutely.
Really.
Absolutely.
And we're still, in some ways, trying to recover from that.
Well, and recovering from that, and then recovering from the pandemic when so many, you know, got their music out there by being in concert or at a festival, or maybe they had a regular routine at a restaurant or someplace in their city.
Mm-hmm.
And, reverting to just doing Zoom concerts and hoping that that tip jar got filled.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a tough road.
Oh,
And
yeah.
a lot of people just don't understand that. And that's why I love talking to people like yourself, because it's like, would I have even known who you were? I'm sure I probably have heard your music, but did I relate it to who David is? Did I relate it to that Dave one day sat down and wrote this song, and then at a christening came up with a name for it? I mean, all these pieces come together.
Mm-hmm. And my
So,
mission through these podcasts is really to spread that word, because yes, I've been at this for a long time, over 40 years, and that's a long time. But and millions of people have heard my music, but there's billions of people who haven't.
absolutely, absolutely. So now that you've got a lot of music out there, obviously you like playing the piano. Do you go out and perform your music for, any place in particular in your hometown, or do you travel? And
That's a good question, but I can't say categorically no, because I have obviously performed my music before, but I am not a performer. I am a composer, a writer, a songwriter, basically.
okay,
And so that's where Gary Prim came in. He's the professional performer. I would write a simple, of all the 120 plus songs that I've written, every one of those got sent to Gary as a simple lead sheet with just the melody and the chords and a recording of me playing it a little bit so he'd not know what the tempo, sort of what it sounded like. And you know what? I found out that the least amount of guidance and direction that I gave to Gary, the better the end product was, because my creativity and his creativity were so much in sync that if I tried to guide his creativity too much, it stifled his creativity and it just didn't work. So when I would give him the basic, just it's like giving somebody an idea and they run with it. Well, I would give him this idea for the song and the melody and the chords, and sometimes not even all the chords. He would change the chords even, but just the melody, and he would run with it. And he's the one that would come up with, well, whether he changed keys in the middle of the song. Sometimes he would change keys a couple of times, and whether it was all solo piano. Some of the things I remember sitting in the studio, and Gary would play one of my songs, and I'd be in the control room with my engineer, Ronnie Light, and we'd be sitting there, and we'd both look at each other and say, that doesn't need anything. That is a piano solo. And sure enough, we'd say, Gary, that is so beautiful. Let's not touch it with any kind of additional sounds at all. And so it was that relationship between me as the songwriter and creator, and Gary as the arranger and performer and creator of all that side of it. It just worked together. That it was just a beautiful arrangement.
so are you still creating?
Well, not so much anymore. I have 14 albums of music that I've created.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm really concentrating on trying to spread the word on the music I already have.
Okay.
Sure enough, I'm sure I could write more songs and go back in the studio with Gary and create another album, but that would be just album number 16 instead of 15. And I think it's more productive for me to spend my time promoting and spreading the word about the big catalog that I have now.
Absolutely.
And you know, my music's on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, on Pandora, Apple Music, iTunes, all of the platforms now. And you know, it's played. I get reports every month
Right.
of how much is played, and it's played hundreds of thousands of times. So I know it's getting out there, and it's still touching people's lives. Although I don't get the immediate direct feedback like I used to when people would call a radio station. I guess they figure on the internet, who in the world do I call to find out about this? So, but anyway, so that was a long answer to your question about whether I'm writing music, but I'm still promoting it.
And that makes a lot of sense, because if there's music out there that some of us don't know about, once we get introduced to it, it's, you know, it's new to us.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean that you need to be out there creating anymore. But I'm sure if something just pops into your head one of these days, we just might see something new out there.
You just never know. Sometimes my wife's been known to be in there, and when I'm sitting at the piano doodling around, just making something up, she'll be over there and she'll have her iPhone turned on record. She says, "That sounds like a new song to me." So
well, it sounds like you have that great relationship where you encourage each other.
mm-hmm.
My husband and I have that as well. Sometimes he'll like sneak into the studio when I'm doing a podcast, and I'll see him taking notes, and he won't tell me initially, what the notes were. He'll wait a day or two, and then he'll say, "Do you remember when I was in the studio?" And he'll just tell me the time, because he doesn't see you on the screen, okay, as I do. He's not looking at the calendar, so he doesn't know the person's name. But he said, "I didn't hear it, but I heard you." He said, "So these are some ideas I have for you." And I'll read them and I go, "Wow, that's pretty perceptive.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with that?" But it's great, because sometimes we just need that little nudge from somebody who we can really trust. So kudos to your wife on that. And obviously she was hearing that Rachel song all along, and humming it even before you knew it was going to go somewhere.
Yeah, if you stop and think about it, what if she had never really prompted me about the song? Or what if I'd never written it down? Or what if I'd never gone to Nashville to record it? There's a lot of what ifs in there that could not have, that could have gone in a totally different direction.
Absolutely.
But thank goodness it didn't. It went the way it is. And you asked me whether I ever performed before. I have one time that I performed in front of 26,000 people in St. Louis, Missouri, on a stage in an outdoor venue. It was a KEZK radio station free concert, and they had invited the 5 top requested artists to this concert. They did a contest, and the 5 people that won the contest they had invited to come perform. It was me, the Letterman, the Association, Don McLean,
oh my,
and George Benson. So I was on the stage with those other 4 groups that Saturday, and it was an absolute unbelievable. I'll never forget it, because I literally could not see the end of the crowd. It was that many people. 26,000 people is a lot of people. And I stood there and signed autographs after I played for 4 hours. I got the worst sunburn I've ever had in my life. I forgot to wear a hat and sunscreen, but everybody wanted me to sign their music and to get their picture made with them. And I stood there for 4 hours meeting people. And right beside me, the Letterman did the same thing. They were there for 4 hours signing autographs and meeting people. Wonderful people. We're still friends with the Letterman after that. They are just super people.
And I want our audience to know, I do a lot of music interviews through a coffee house in upstate New York. It's called Cafe Lena. It's the oldest coffee house still in existence. They are 60 plus years old. And because of my connection with them through my brother and some other people up there, um, I've been blessed to interview musicians from the 50s and 60s, musicians who I grew up in awe of, never thought I would ever get within 10 feet of them. Um, and here I am having conversations with them like I am with you, Dave, and realizing that they're all wonderful people. You know, we sometimes walk around thinking, oh, I have to idolize them. No, you have to appreciate them
Hmm.
and appreciate what they do. And if it's something that you want to do, like you said, move forward. Just
Hmm.
keep moving because you just never know. And um, I'm sure that sometimes you're still in awe thinking, if my wife hadn't heard this, I
Hmm.
may not have written it down. If I wasn't working in Nashville, who would have thought to go to Nashville to record it?
Right.
Um, so everything fell into place and I hope it continues to. Um, and if you decide to perform, please let me know because I'll get on a plane or a train and
Oh, bless your
I'll come
heart.
hear you.
Well, thank you.
Very good. So tell us about the book one more time so our listeners can go out
Well,
and get it.
well, it's the title of it is called Touched by the Music, and the subtitle is How the Story and Music of Rachel's Song Can Change Your Life. And it's the stories that I've told today about recording Rachel's song, naming Rachel's song, and all those intervening stories between then and now. And it's a book full of inspiring stories. I counted them the other day, and there are 78 little short stories in the book. All of them have kind of a special message or meaning to them. And I devoted one whole chapter in the book, chapter 21, is nothing but 22 pages of excerpts of these wonderful notes and letters that I got over the years.
How terrific.
And I even reread through some of them a while ago, looking specifically at those that had to do with people who were going through a maze of difficulty in their life. And and we won't have time to read them, but I dog-eared about 10 or 12 of the stories that were very specific about people dealing with issues of depression or disease or a loved one dying or a loved one having Alzheimer's or all these specific stressing issues that go on in people's lives.
Sure.
And how much my music had played a role in their being able to go through that and survive it and maybe even thrive through it. So the music is very therapeutic in a lot of ways. And my book is full of the stories that, hopefully you'll find to be inspiring as well.
Sounds
And you
wonderful.
can find my book just go to my website. It's
Okay.
combsmusic.com, combsmusic.com. And on the left side of the page, you'll see the cover of my book and a link right below it that says go purchase it from Amazon. And on Amazon, you can get a paperback copy for those of you that still like to read a real book, paper book. And you can get an ebook, a Kindle book, and you can also get an Audible book. And you can listen to me read it to you for 8 hours.
I love that. Hey, we're going to be taking a trip to New York in the next week. So that would be a great thing for my
Yes.
husband and I to listen to. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
How about that?
I love
And then
that.
on the right side of my page on my website is a picture of the cover of my CD, Rachel's Song. And you can go on the link right below it and go to Amazon and either buy the CD or you can download the MP3s or you can stream it if you're an Amazon Music person. So very simple. Go to my website and there you are with all you need to know about how to get to my music.
I love it. Well, I'm going to ask you after I either read or listen to the book, will you come back and then read some of the excerpts?
I would be happy to. I'd love to do that.
Oh, that sounds exciting to me. Comes right from the author himself.
that would be fun.
All right. I will be in touch. We'll set something up.
Okay.
In the meantime, have a wonderful day. And it was wonderful to get to meet you.
Well, same here, Karen. It was a pleasure to meet you too. And I'll look forward to next time.
Very good. Have a great day now.
Thank you.